Hi, I'm Mariska Hargitay. When I started on Law & Order Special Victims Unit, violence and abuse had never played a significant role in my life. And then there I was, immersed every day in some of the worst that people can do to each other. But it wasn't just the scripts that pressed the tragedy of these acts into my consciousness. It was also the horrifying statistics and the letters and emails I began receiving from victims of abuse sharing their own personal stories. Domestic violence usually happens behind closed doors or hides in plain sight, beyond the reach of family, neighbors, friends, and co-workers who feel helpless. In the true story that you're about to see, a dedicated police detective and her colleagues reassemble all the disparate clues that might have, but failed, to come together to prevent this heart-wrenching tragedy.
There are only 3 possible outcomes in an abusive relationship. We have to keep in mind that either the batterer is going to stop the abuse, or the victim is going to leave that relationship, or someone is going to die. And no one wants any more lives lost in this fight against domestic violence. I'm Detective Deirdre Fischel, and I'm employed with the State College Police Department. I was hired in 1994 and worked in the Uniform Patrol Division for just over 9 years. In 2004, I was promoted to the rank of detective and have handled over 500 cases of domestic violence. In 2006, my agency received a federal grant to have me head a unit called the Victim-Centered Intensive Case Management Unit. We looked at our statistics in Centre County from 1999 to 2003. And although we have a very low homicide rate in Centre County, we found out that statistically speaking, our percentage for domestic violence homicides is very high. And when we looked at those stats from 1999 to 2003, the numbers were staggering. And so we said to ourselves, something has to be done. We have to look at the way we're responding to domestic violence to see if we can learn from what is happening, learn from what we are seeing in our own county. So we created a committee called the Centre County Domestic Violence Fatality Review Committee. And what that committee does is we look at deaths related to domestic violence. And we look at the events that occurred in that relationship prior to the homicide. We look at everything that was happening up to the moment of that death. And we try to see how we can change our system response up to that point to somehow change the ending.
You know, you can tell that some people are just there and others, really pay attention to detail. And Amy was one that she always followed up, she always answered your questions. And I always thought Amy was very conscientious, very hard worker, intelligent young woman, to be doing the things that she wanted to do. Amy and Vince, I think this was the early part of their relationship. So I think the attention that he put forth, it seemed like very positive attention. She seemed to be excited about it, that he would stop in and ask where she was, and he was concerned about, her whereabouts, or he wanted to see her. So it seemed like, being younger and in love, it was a very positive thing at the time.
So in 2004, we did a case review on a couple, Amy and Vincent McGee. At the time that Amy was graduating from Penn State, Vincent was coming back stateside and discharging from the military. The two then met while Amy was working at a home improvement store and Vincent was working for an armored car service, making the money delivery and pickup at that home improvement store.
He seemed like a nice guy, but, I didn't know, he was an alcoholic, and I didn't know that he was going to be abusive, and so.
I just thought some of his behaviors that he exhibited, with the gun and the posturing and some of those things, I just thought he was a little bit off, but I didn't know him very well. Those were only behaviors that you saw when he would come in.
In September of that year, the home improvement store sent a letter to the armored car service asking that Vincent no longer be the one who brings the money and picks the money up. and the letter indicated there was a conflict of interest. Now, when I talked to her coworkers, I asked them, what is this conflict of interest? What would happen when Vincent would show up there? And they told me that Amy would become very distressed. It would interfere with her work day. She would have to worry about if she was talking to a male coworker, if she was in the break room with males, if she didn't get to the door fast enough when he walked in, if she was talking to a male customer.
And I remember one specific time that it was at the end of an evening, and she appeared to be a little bit concerned about, she seemed to be anxious about Vince maybe not being there when he was in the store. And I just remember saying to her, you know, Amy, you don't worry about that. I mean, you have a lot of life ahead of you, meaning that, you know, you have a lot of opportunity. And she just kind of laughed it off and just said, that's Vince.
I didn't know that Amy Homan was Amy McGee. And a matter of fact, she had grown, so last I saw her was years before, but when she showed up with her father, of course, it all clicked into place for me that night.
In December of 1998, she needs help. Vince is intoxicated. She wants to leave. She doesn't know what to do. So her parents go over to the house. She gets in the car and she starts to tell them about his alcohol abuse and the things that he's been doing and what he did when she tried to leave. And her parents convince her to go to the police station with them. So they drive to the police station, and now she's in the car, in the police station, in the parking lot, and they're trying to convince her to go in and tell the police what is happening. She doesn't know if what the police can do will be better or will make it worse. And eventually the officer comes out into the parking lot, talks to Amy. Thankfully, he knew Amy since she was a little girl.
I believe this was the first time that she actually took a step that night to protect herself and her child. So that was a huge step for her to take. And I'm sure it was very difficult for her.
So she went and she outlined the history of what had been happening. She recounted him pulling the baby out of her arms, him choking her, him breaking things in the house, threatening to burn the house down, threatening to kill her.
It's like when you talked to her and he wasn't around. It was like she was trying to get out of the situation. But, you know, I think she knew that he would try to do something, but she wouldn't tell us that.
Amy would come into the store for work with bruises. The one time that really stuck out in my mind was the time that she came in and she had bruises across both of her arms. And she said that she was pulling something off the top of a shelf in the closet and it fell down and hit her. And later she admitted that he had hit her with a baseball bat.
You can't force a person that's being abused to come forward. One, because they're scared. Two, because they have no self-esteem. And three, they don't know if other people are going to believe what they're saying. So I had told her my story. And I had told her that I actually had just left in April of that year my husband of 21 years of domestic violence. It was funny. I guess I wanted Amy, when I learned about her, I wanted her to experience the happiness that I felt, believe it or not, the morning that I left.
And that moves us to November 8th of 2001. Amy got up that day thinking it was like every other day. She knew she had to get ready for work and then wake Vincent in order for him to drive her to work. She wasn't allowed to have a car. So the standard routine in that household was that he would get up, drive her to work, she would work throughout the day, and then he would pick her up immediately after work so that he could then retake that control of her day. So on this day, November 8th, she woke up, got ready for work, went to wake Vincent. And she says to Vincent, "It's time to get up, I have to go to work." And he says, "No, I'm not driving you." I have to go to work. I can't keep missing work. Every time I miss work, I'm getting in more and more trouble. I'm gonna lose my job. You take the truck then. Take the truck. This was unheard of. Why would he let her take the truck? Are you sure? Are you sure it's okay if I take the truck? You go ahead and take the truck. I trust you. So she gets in the truck and she drives to work. And she gets herself frantic, worrying about what's happening there at the house. What's going on with her children? Why was she allowed to take the truck to work today?
We were busy. We were short-staffed at the store. And Vince started calling her on her cell phone. And I actually, at the time, didn't realize that her cell phone was ringing so much and that she was answering the phone because I was with customers and stuff. And it got to the point where Vince was actually calling the store a lot.
Amy was kind of quiet that morning. She wasn't as jovial as what she usually is. She seemed concerned.
Lo and behold, Vincent shows up. He had walked from his residence to the store. He comes into the store and he goes into the back room where he begins to confront Amy. Where's the truck? Why aren't you taking my calls? Who's hanging up the phone on me? Who's telling me that I can't call you? Who do you think you are for standing up to me? So the coworker goes into the back room where armed Vincent, coworkers don't know he's armed, where armed Vincent is arguing with his wife. They go up to Vincent and they tell him, if you don't leave, we're gonna call the police. And Vincent says, fine. And he storms out of the store. When she has convinced herself that he has really left, the phone starts to ring at the phone store. And it's Vincent. He found the truck. And he tells her he's gonna go out drinking. And she says, enough. I can't do this anymore. And she tells him, you have until tomorrow to get out of that house. You call your brother, you call your sister, you call whoever you need to call, but you tell them to come get you and come get your stuff and get out. It is over with us. I am done. I'm taking the boys and I'm going to my parents' house, and that's where we're staying until you get out of there. And he slams down the phone on her.
You know, she was scared to death. That's the only way I can describe it. She's just scared to death. She begged and pleaded with me to please don't call the police. And it wasn't about Vince. It was about what Vince would do afterwards.
And at 6 o'clock, Amy's parents pick her up at the phone store. So she turns to her dad and she says, hey, can we stop at the house? I need to go in and I need to get some things for the babies. And they drive back to Amy's house so she can go into the house and get all the things that a mom would need to take care of her babies at Grandma's house for a couple of days. So when they pull up to the residence, Amy gets out of the car while her father and her mother and her 2 young babies sit in the car. She goes into the house to get diapers and onesies and bottles. And then her parents and her children wait. And no one knew Vincent was inside the house. He had parked the truck inside the garage. And she's in there for 5 minutes. And then Vincent comes out. And when Vincent comes out, he says, someone call 911. I just shot Amy. And he shot her in the top of the head at point-blank range, and he killed her instantly. And when we hear a story like this, every time I tell this, I think to myself, make it end differently. Make it end with a happy ending. And I can't, because this really happened in the life of Amy Homan McGee. And so we have to ask ourselves, what can we do as a community to change the ending for another victim?